Welcome to the Ruby stage. We have a wonderful panel ahead of us. So our first panel of speakers, I'm excited to invite to the stage Amy Vanderhorst, National Sales Manager at Panasonic. Thank you, Amy. Heather Sith, Customer Service Lead Supervisor at Thorn. Mara Dumsky, Chief Fragrance Officer at Pura, and Leslie Allen, Partner of Voorhees E-Control. Welcome to the panel, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now I'll hand over to Whitney to start the session.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. All right, so anybody feel free to ask questions. I'm just going to throw some out. We got some great personalities on stage, so I don't think this will be too tough. But I just want to start off with a question that a lot of people think about. Why do I want to go down the path of control? How is it impacting my business? So if you could maybe give just a little bit of information about your role in the company and sort of what are some of the control challenges that you faced as an organization, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mara.
So I'm Mara Dumsky. I'm the Chief Fragrance Experience Officer at Pura. I run the fragrance division within Pura, so it's almost as having a fragrance house in the middle of a technology company. So it's very, very exciting. I moved here 3 years ago from New York City, where I have been in the fragrance industry for 28 years. And to your question, your brand is everything. The story that you tell with your brand is everything, because if you don't believe in it, nobody else will. So it's really important to be super clear on how you deliver that message.
Okay. Now for you all, I think, and we've talked a little bit, and you guys have done a lot of work on the control front. Would you say that it's been primarily to assist in positioning for growing e-commerce, or has it been more in response to brick and mortar retailers complaining about pricing, or what's been the big pain point that got the executives really interested in going down the control journey?
Yeah, absolutely, both.
Yeah.
So we are an e-commerce business. We have our own website. We work with major brand partners, which differentiates ourselves from others because these are very high-end, like candle, fine fragrance brands. But we also have a retail outlet and a retail channel that is growing by leaps and bounds. So we're seeing how valuable that is to get our message out through retail as well. And going forward, because we're futuristic and we're always thinking about the future, we are thinking about brick and mortar.
Okay, so it's trying to prevent the channel conflict and having
Correct.
brick and mortars
Absolutely.
not pointing to all the stuff that's
Absolutely,
going online.
and is everything, and I'm sure we're going to probably touch on it. It's really important when you do work with these retailers that you have a very strong relationship with them. Because whatever your promotional calendar is, you have to make sure that they're following the same thing, that they're not doing markdowns when you're not doing it. And of course, most importantly, and I'm learning this from my retail team, at Pura, is there are a lot of rogue resellers out there. So fraudulent behavior, even duplicating our fragrances, which we are taking steps to counteract. You know what I mean? It's very, very important.
Okay. Right. How about you, Amy?
Yeah, for us, I'm with Panasonic, and this is a company that's over 100 years old. So they are very steeped in their culture, their quality, the performance of the product, and making sure that that is handed directly to the consumer. So controlling that brand is an ultimate priority because we want that best-in-class customer experience, and just like Mara, know how incredibly valuable that is.
Heather, how about you? What would you say has been the primary driver for you all, or the challenges that you had to address?
The growth.
Trying to get growth.
Yeah, we've grown so much so quickly that and just not having the foundation in the very beginning, trying to dial it back to get the foundation to then proceed on. Being a consumable product, we also need to make sure of our quality. Quality assurance is huge for us. For safety, for you. We have a saying at Thorn is we are all family, and we all take our Thorn products. Everyone here, everyone can tell. I take it, I promote it, I live by them. And I would give it to my parents, I would give it to my children, and if they're making a product that I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So
So, Mara, what would you say is some of the strategies that you've all implemented to try to avoid that channel conflict you're talking about?
Avoid that channel conflict. We're different.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're always pushing the envelope to disrupt and trailblaze. It's very, very important. We also embrace the unexpected with what we're doing. You know, one of the things that we believe in internally is when you talk about strategy, you know that you have a strategy if you could tell the story behind it. So storytelling is very, very important to us. Also the way that we perceive our brand. I mentioned unexpected, you know, yes, we do fragrances, we know ingredients, we know trends, we know what the market wants, we know what our consumer wants, but a lot of times our fragrance trends drive how we're developing devices. So what I do for Puro by creating all the fragrances has to marry with the technology as well. But for the unexpected, I mean, we work with our marketplace with many high-end brands. But most recently, we launched a project with the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. And I was actually just there 2 weeks ago, and it's my, you know, where I lived for a long time. It is outstanding because we didn't just create a signature fragrance for the Met. We worked with the curators of the Met to make sure that we were capturing the history and bringing art to life through fragrance and our technology. And it's magnificent, and revenue-wise, and that's not the most important thing, but it is when you're in a company, it's exceeding expectations. So it gives us great pleasure to know that we could do just about everything. We work across platforms. That is our strategy. We know how to tell the story, we have the claims, and we know the benefits of it.
No, that's great. So for Panasonic, I know we talked a little bit, and I may just do a minute or two sort of on the story, because I was involved in the very early days, and I know you've sort of come into the role related to the ventilation fans and the business unit. But you know, Panasonic was one of the early, in their ventilation fans, one of the early kind of clients working with Pattern and Voorhees, and they were selling 1P at the time, and they were having very significant price erosion that was going on the marketplace, and a lot of the distributors and folks that they were selling to were really complaining about this. And you know, at the time, it was a little uncertain on whether you could switch from 1P to 3P and how they would handle that. But they made they were an early adopter, and that unit made the decision to switch over from the 1P to 3P. And then Voorhees came in and put in all the foundational policies and the enforcement foundation. And I think when you first started out as a 3P seller, it was like 5% of the buy box. And then, but over time, working and cleaning it up, got to a place where they're consistently with 95% of the buy box. And it was really, I think it's been a huge success story, you know, not only from, you know, getting the control on the platform, but to really helping them in their relationships with their distributors. And then, you know, and then obviously working with like a Pattern, being able to throw in the growth levers. You know, what's really neat is, and this is, like, you know, I've talked to a lot of brands here that are just growing really fast right now on the Amazon, and I've asked them, like, you know, what's going on? And a lot of them said, you know, getting that control of that buy box, and then, you know, you'll hear Pattern and them talk about their technology, and being able to throw that in is just allowing us to grab so much share from the competition. It's just a really neat formula that I think we're seeing working really well. So, you know, it's been a great journey, and you know, I don't know if you have anything to comment or add on sort of the experience of it.
Yeah, I guess just a couple of things, because to your point, I joined Panasonic a little over a year ago, and in my previous position, we were 1P.
Yeah.
And dealt with all those trials and tribulations, right? The race to the bottom, the channel conflict, all of that day-to-day fighting that went on. And when I joined Panasonic and started working with the team, I was like, what do you mean somebody else does it all for you? We don't have to do it ourselves? I was like, oh my God, this is fabulous. And it truly has been an outstanding relationship. And we thank you so much for the support, because, yeah, it's really helped prevent that race to the bottom with our other online retailers. And we've told our customers we have from a distribution standpoint, a do not sell list. We are saying that Pattern is our exclusive Amazon supplier. And it's worked out really well for us going forward.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It amazes me like how much of a variance there are of leadership of companies right now.
Yeah.
There's where some people still think having lots of your brick and mortar distributors and resellers be your seller on Amazon is a good strategy. And I think they have these old relationships they don't want to disrupt, and it's hard. And then you see on the other spectrum sort of the what I would call the model I believe in, but the cutting edge approach of getting an exclusive seller that's the best in growing your brand and then driving the control to that. And I think that it's just fascinating to me to sort of see that whole variance. Heather, so Thorn is, I would say, one of the best I've seen from a control and growth perspective on Amazon. I mean, I don't know your exact numbers, and I probably shouldn't cite them in front of everybody, but the amount of growth they've gotten in their channel is amazing. And Heather's been a big part of it. Leslie works.
Yes.
She's at Vori. She heads up what we call our investigation diversion diagnostics group. So Leslie's job is basically working with brands and figuring out where are these people who are selling online, where are they getting their products from? Where in your distribution are they getting them so we can cut off the leaks and sources? And she and Heather do what I would consider a really best practice on how they attack it. So maybe, I don't know, Leslie, if you want to start, or Heather, if you guys could just kind of describe some of those unique strategies, because I know there's a lot of people in here, they may be working with their brands on how to get control, and what are some of the strategies that you all are doing day in, day out to help give Thorn such control on the channel? Yeah.
Well, we started, first of all, getting that foundation in. So implementing the policies so that our pre-existing customers and new customers know exactly what we expect. What do we expect from them as a customer? Also letting them know what we expect, or what they know, sorry. Finding out what they expect from us. So do they want to go out onto Amazon? Letting them know that's not an option, but we have other options for them. And we've built different programs in for different ways for them to build their business. Also, teaching our teams internally how to see the red flags, how to vet new accounts, and just going through the process of if you do track a product back to an unauthorized seller, are they a seller that you actually want to make them an authorized seller and help them learn the correct process to open up a different channel instead of going on to Amazon? Because there is big revenue there too. And then if they're not, we network. We network with other brands, and we have a blacklist. And nobody really wants a customer that isn't willing to follow rules that we've set forth. And quality is everything, and that's for every brand, doesn't matter what industry you're in. If they're going to dilute my quality and my brand, they're going to do it to yours. Mm-hmm. And that's what everybody's kind of looking at, going, okay, we need to all work together.
Yeah. Leslie, do you want to sort of I know you work a lot with Thorn on trying to help them figure out not only who the sellers are, where they're getting the products from, so they can take action. Maybe you just want to run down a couple of the strategies that you all do?
Yeah, sure. So one of the great things about Thorn is that the relationship and communication that we have with each other. And one of the big things we do is Thorn and some of its distributors provide their sell-through data to Vori's. And we're able to take that data and compare it against the hundreds of thousands of sellers that we've identified as bad actors on the marketplaces and say, hey, these accounts that you're selling to are actually operating these storefronts on Amazon and they're selling your products. And we can take that information back to Heather and her team, and they can decide if they want to cut off that account, have an education moment with the account, and how they want to handle that on an internal basis. Alternatively, if there are sellers that are being especially disruptive on Amazon, if we don't know who they are directly in the customer data, we can look at what are they selling and what quantities and what variations. And we look through the data that we receive and see what customer accounts have also purchased that same selection. So we can go back to Heather and say, hey, based on your data, we think that these customers are supplying this storefront and it's causing major disruption on Amazon. And then again, she's able to take that to her team so that they can handle that internally.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they think about how to get control of a clean channel, we always say you can't just typically just enforce your way to clean channels. One is that we talk a lot about you need the foundation. If you don't have the foundational policies telling people where they can and can't sell, that gives you a foundation to go after a gray market, you're not going to really be able to even enforce, but you're not going to have the policies you can point to. But the brands that get control of the channels, it's a balance of controlling your distribution and enforcement. And some brands out there, some of the largest CPG companies in the world, they're going to be more hesitant to be super aggressive on enforcement. And so they're going to have to be really tight in controlling their distribution. And this is where and then other brands that, if you're in the direct selling industry, you're not going to control your distribution very tightly. What you're going to do is you're probably going to flood the market out there as many products and many sellers as you can, but you got to be super aggressive in your enforcement. And if you're not really willing to be aggressive in your enforcement or control your distribution, then you're not going to really be able to have a clean channel. But what I really, and what we really believe is just the way the future's heading is that, especially when you go to international, using data analytics and insights to be able to identify the leaks in your distribution and where the products are coming from that are causing the problems online is going to be huge. And also being able to use that to flag people that you don't want to sell to, sort of cut it off at its root cause before it ends up online. I mean, yeah, we do, I think we've done 5 million enforcement actions on Amazon, C&D letters, takedowns, draft complaints, lawsuits, all that. But to get that permanently clean channel, it comes down to that distribution control. And like what Leslie's talking about, what they're doing, I just think is so fascinating. So you take your sales data, you throw that into a data warehouse, and we have all the enforcement actions and sellers we've gone after for the last 10 years. I think there's like 1 million different sellers in there. And so you have all those sellers, but it's not just their identities. Anybody can say identity, but it's where does that seller source their products from for other brands? What actions do they take in response to a C&D letter? Are they represented by counsel? What locations do they live at? All these attributes around those sellers help you determine the right action. And so a lot of times we can say, all right, this person's trying to buy from you. They're basically a known diverter seller. Do not sell to them. That's huge to sort of cut it off. Then two, I'm seeing this person online. The database tells me they typically get their products from Unify or KE, or they get them from some other distributor. And then that person says, oh yeah, I need to go back to that distributor and really, explain that they shouldn't be able to sell to people. So it's that full circle that I think is really important to ultimately get channel. And it's going to be real important too as you go to other regions. Like, we've talked about Europe. You may have to be a little more conservative in how you enforce in Europe, given some of the regulations over there. So then the distribution control becomes a lot more important. I want to ask, I know we could take this a lot of different directions. Does anybody have any particular questions for us that they would like us to dive into? Yep, good.
This is probably for Amy, Heather. So,
yep.
Similar to Panasonic, I represent brands that are 100+ years, some of them 98+% household penetration. I'm curious, you go from, I think it was 3% to 95% buy box. How much of that was enforcement versus the distribution control? And if a lot of it is enforcement through Voorhees, how long did that kind of take to see a measurable impact on the buy box?
Yeah, I think it was both, but you can talk about how long the impact took, Whitney.
Yeah, I've actually got my notes on exactly.
It's a constant fight, right? You don't do it and it's okay. We're good to go. We've got 100% control. I mean, these guys are slick and they're constantly popping up and finding new ways to put your product online. But it's our objective is to really preserve that customer experience, and knowing that we and Pattern are going to provide a better customer experience than Bob Smith, seller on Amazon.
Yeah, so basically with them, it took about 3 months to get the policies implemented, because you have to get the policies drafted, then you got to get them improved internally. And then you have to give people, when you send out policies to people saying you're no longer allowed to sell in the marketplaces, you typically want to get them a sell-through period to be fair to them. So some people do 60 days, some people do 30 days. So I think they did, one of those, and then they send that out. And actually, a lot of times just the telling of sending out those policies, that has a big impact, because now you've got people saying, oh, I can't sell there anymore. So a number of them drop off. So they actually went from 3% to 90% in just about, looks like about 4 months. And so that was a lot of it is sending out the policies, but then it's doing enforcement on top of that. I can't tell you exactly how much was enforcement, and it's hard to bifurcate. I like to call it 360 channel cleanup, because I'm looking at a seller and I'm trying to figure out, do I want to be aggressive in enforcement, or do I want to deal with this person through cutting off the source and distribution? Because nobody wants to go get embroiled in some big fight. So there are certain sellers out there, notorious diverters, that I know are represented by counsel, I know may fight if they're challenged. And so for them, I want to figure out where it's coming from and cut off their source. If it's somebody that we know has always responded to C&D letters, things like that, then you just, but it's kind of looking at it a seller by seller basis to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's customer base. You have to know your customer base, and everyone knows that 2020 made all of our customers change, and there was a big shift. So we had to look at different avenues that we never had to enforce before. And just knowing that we're like, okay, now we have to look at this, and telemedicine was a huge one. And just knowing that, okay, acupuncture is not something that can be done telemedicine. So that's something that we would train our customer service and our sales reps on. If you've got somebody that's saying that they're doing telemedicine on this, it's not real.
Yeah.
Being able to weed through what they're telling you.
Yeah, and I think you guys, this is why I said for us, sometimes I feel like I have a neighbor who's a surgeon. He's like, it gets boring after a while because you do this, this, and this. But we see sort of the same pattern. I mean, you guys do the same pattern. It's reseller policies, then
Right.
it's enforcement, cutting off the distribution enforcement. And ultimately using data. I mean, the KPI we track is, it's not how many sellers you have, it's not how many takedowns, it's what percentage of sales is your authorized seller getting at the price you want. And so it's how fast can we get, like if you're going with the pattern or someone else or you're doing it yourself, I want 95% of the sales going out the door through your authorized seller at the price you want. And then you use the data to drive to that KPI as fast as possible. I think on the, one other thing I'll say on the policies, the team that does the policies will say, drafting the policies is the easy part. The majority of their time is in the change management education with the resellers. So it's communications, it's Q&As, and it's educating them why this is good for the whole entire ecosystem. You have to be really good at educating your distributors and your retailers that for you to win in your own channels, which you're specialized, I have to have more control on the marketplace.
Absolutely.
Because if I allow you to sell on there and everybody else, the price, there's no way, people have heard me say like, having a bunch of sellers on Amazon and maintaining price control is like leaving my kids alone with iPad and candy and saying, don't touch either of them. Like, it doesn't work, And so you have to explain that if I allow a bunch of authorized sellers, the price is going to be low. You brick and mortar retailers, and you're not going to be able to be profitable. And just own. I mean, we used to have a channel management consultant that was on our team, and she's like, it's all about the people who are best in those specific channels, allowing them to do what they want to do. But when you have somebody else go into a channel that they're not really specialized in,
Right.
then it just screws up you at the end of the day because you're not getting the maximum growth.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's true. You know, can I just interject?
Yeah, go for it.
No, because I'm listening to all this, and I totally agree with it from, you know, our point of view, but you really need to maintain that holistic control.
Yeah.
Relationships are really, really
Yes.
important. You guys probably know this better than I do, with your retailers. And one of the things that we actually do at Pura is we sell individual fragrance vials on our website, but so the price point can't be matched to some of the retailers that we have channels with. We sell kits or sets where there's the device with 2 fragrances. That way the price point could be either higher and it's difficult to match it.
Yeah.
Right.
When
More questions?
I remember, yeah, well, I'll quit talking for a second. Yeah. Any more questions out there? Go for it.
So we're talking about if you're already on Amazon,
Yeah.
controlling the buy box.
Yep.
But one conversation I heard a lot yesterday is strategically maybe I don't sell on Amazon because I don't want the perception of my product to go down by being on Amazon. My gut reaction to that is you might have resellers that through UPC end up putting your product on Amazon. And now
You will.
have control over the branding and the listing.
Right.
And that can, destroy from a perception perspective, but also when you receive the product, is it damaged? Is it expired? So what would you say to someone who is strategically not selling on Amazon?
Get with
That you
Pat.
need to sell on Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, so like Nike, remember the big press release? Like, we're not going to be on Amazon. It's like, yeah, you're there all the time. It's not you intentionally; it's other people selling. But this has been fascinating for us to watch play out in the direct selling industry. Like, that's kind of where Voorhees got its start 10 years ago. Is all these direct sellers had the Mary Kays and Herbalifes. That people would go out and they would sell, and they'd all complain because they were getting undercut on Amazon, and they all declared, the direct sellers were like, we'll never be on Amazon. Our own sellers just will not tolerate it, and we're always going to declare that we're not on Amazon, even though a bunch of people. And now today, they're going on Amazon. And they're coming up with like really creative, you could come up with creative solutions where, like, let's say one of your sellers, let's say like you're a company like that where you're like, you want to do it to control, but maybe your real big growth is off of Amazon. They come up with solutions where, like, if somebody else is out there selling and they want to do refills, they can like get a flag and they can get credit for the sale on Amazon, pointing people to the authorized store. Or the pricing is a little bit different. We can come up with a way to have the person out there that's selling it, they can sell it at a lower price so that than what's being sold on Amazon. You got to be careful there because there's laws around pricing differently in different channels. But you got to come up with legitimate justifications. But there's creative ways I think you can do it to keep those folks happy and still own the Amazon channel.
Yeah. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, consumers are getting more savvy, but they don't know who the third-party sellers are. So,
Yeah.
and that's why it's so critical about that overarching customer experience. So, and we talk about it internally. The other marketplaces like a Walmart.com. It's like, well, we don't sell on Walmart.com. Well, yes, we are, because it's through third-party sellers. So you need to determine internally if you guys want to fully get in the game.
Go ahead, yep.
I want to actually speak to Walmart.com. I'm from the smaller brands, and we are a high-end, higher-priced option. And so we're going after Nordstrom, we're going after Crate and Barrel, we want to be partners with them. However, we have resellers on Walmart now that we're on Amazon, and they're price gouging, and they're, and then I ordered one. They shipped it from Amazon.
Drop ship.
I bought it on Walmart.com.
Yeah.
So what would you say to a high-end brand about the Walmart when you're trying to get into those higher retailers?
Yeah, I think control is going to be super important. Walmart, this is just one of the most fun things that got out of work. But I remember talking to the head of Walmart marketplace strategy, and he said, where we're going to really beat Amazon, because we're going to be much more restrictive in who we allow to sell on Walmart, and we're going to attract the brands, and we're going to attract really good customers, and that's going to really be a good money-making approach for us. And they tried it for a while, and then I talked to him again. I was like, "How's that working for you?" And he's like, "It's not." He's like I'm like, "You're going to have to open up the floodgates, aren't you? Like how Amazon, to be able to get the scale to grow like a platform." And they're like, "Yep." And then if you saw, I think it was October or last year, they were like getting onboarding, like their graph, they're onboarding like the same amount of new sellers, and then it just skyrocketed. So since October last year, Walmart is just, the ease to get on there, it's just so easy for people to get on there now. So they're basically turning into Amazon. And so you're gonna have to do, you know, the same type of monitoring, enforcement, control to keep that channel clean, just like you do on Amazon, or else you're gonna run into the same problems. Go ahead, yep.
I was wondering if you have any experience you could say about the resistance to control perhaps being seen as antitrust as an organization. Like, has that been an issue and how have you navigated that?
Yeah, so we have a whole entire compliance team. So basically, like, we're broken up into strategy, foundation, the platform, the data analytics team, enforcement, and compliance. And on the compliance team are two antitrust lawyers, a distribution lawyer. We have a data privacy compliance attorney, because being run out of a law firm. So we always say the mission, if you're trying to control a channel, what's impactful, what's efficient, what's legally compliant. So this space, so you have to be able to sit down with the lawyers in the room. We have to be able to sit there and go toe-to-toe and fully understand the laws and help them come up with a strategy that's compliant with it. This space is kind of like taxes, where if I want to reduce my taxes as a company, how do I make the most amount of money and do it in a legally compliant way? And so, you know, it's the same thing. I gotta help a brand understand how can we have you go to market in a way that's legally compliant. Like, hey, someone says, I want my prices to be X on a platform in Europe, okay? Well, I can't go put a pricing policy in Europe, but I can help you be more selective with your distribution. I can put in heightened quality controls that I know only your authorized seller can comply with, and that I believe are legitimate based on the negative reviews I'm seeing, and I can use that to keep the channel clean, and that's how I can, you know, potentially, you know, be able to stabilize your advertised pricing there, but not get you into legal mess. So it's understanding where those things are and crafting a strategy that's compliant with them. And you know, when we talk about like our strategy consult phase, a big part is what can we do from a policy enforcement perspective that doesn't comply with, you know, there's laws around, you know, like you can't have different pricing across you can't have different pricing across the people you sell to. If you're going to have a pricing policy, you can't have agreements. They got to be policies. So you definitely have compliance has to be a huge part of what you're doing, and you got to make your internal legal team. We have to bring in people that are very sophisticated, make them comfortable that it is compliant. That's part of the process. Go ahead. Yep.
Two questions. The first is, who's owning the enforcement for your organization? Is it one individual enforcing across all the channels, or is it each channel account manager enforcing in their specific channels?
So it's one enforcement team. So there's a strategy enforcement person. And what we believe in is that we call it basically data-driven precision enforcement. And so that sounds like a buzzword. What it means is, like, people a lot of times enforce online how marketing used to be junk mail. One tactic, throw it out, and just try to apply it to everybody. And when we got into this space, we started realizing that just in one channel on Amazon, for us, I think there's 48 different tactics that we can do, and there's about 20 different types of sellers. There's, you know, somebody that bought products, get one free, a nice old lady that's just selling a product on there. There's a professional diverter who's got a big-time legal team. There's a counterfeiter from China. There's a patent so there's all these different things going on. So basically, you have a strategy enforcement person, and below them, you have brand protection analysts that used to work at like a Mark Monitor. So we have a team of like 6 of those now. Then there's legal enforcement, but that's run out of a low-cost enforcement center, right? Then you have like your investigation team. Then you have escalated enforcement. So you're looking at the data, you're figuring out the attributes around the seller, and how they responded in the past, and then you're triaging into the enforcement tactics depending upon those attributes. And you do that across all the channels. Now, the reason one team's got to look across a lot of the channels is the same sellers may be selling in the US, maybe selling in Mexico, maybe selling in Canada. I don't want to go waste myself with takedowns across all these channels. I want to do seller-based enforcement. I want to get the seller to stop. I don't want to get their listing removed, because then you're just going to play whack-a-mole all day long. So I look across all your channels, find the most disruptive sellers, then triage to the right tactics.
That would be me.
Yeah.
And we have a person as
And
well.
I work very closely with Voorhees, so, and I have my network of other brands that will come to me as well in policing their own brand. They'll come to me and say, hey, did you know you're listed on this website too? I found this for you, and I'll do the same for them.
So there's a platform, and Pattern has one called Predict. It's a great platform. For non-pattern brands, we have one that is run out of Ancillary Business, Precision, eControl. But what these platforms do is they're scraping the buy box every half hour, and then they're basically telling you exactly how much revenue are you losing to each seller, and that helps you really. What happens is somebody from the brand is usually getting on the phone with somebody from Voorhees, and they're talking about who do we go after, what are our tactics going to be, and you're making sure both people are aligned, because they don't want us typically just running, rogue after every seller, and so it's usually making that joint decision on who to go after, ultimately on who's going to have the most impact on the business. Other questions? This is a good way to, keep going.
So I'm a customer of Lori, so thank you for helping us.
Yeah.
My question is, this morning, John was talking about marketplaces, people are going there. Do you ever see the platforms themselves, Amazon, anybody helping with the enforcement or e-control if they know that a seller is bad? I know that sellers can create different storefronts, but do you see any assistance from the platforms?
So they will assist if it's an IP violation or fraud or theft or things like that. And we're really excited. Amazon just we're one of only 3 people in the world to be in this special program where we go to one single contact very high up in Amazon, and we just call them when we think there's a legitimate basis to remove the seller. And you don't have to deal with any of their bureaucracy and the people offshore that are just willy-nilly, and but they trust us that we're gonna be legitimate in this. Because what they're coming after people for, and lawyers are coming after people for, is using Amazon's system to report things as counterfeit and IP violations when it's not. And they're really, and what they trust us to do is to only come when it's those types of violations. If it's a matter of controlling your own distribution or your own pricing policies, they'll say that's up to the brand. So a lot of stuff falls in the first category, and they'll help you with that. And you have to, and then we're having conversations with them regularly about, we see this thing, we think this is theft, someone's stealing this from CVS, we need you to help shut this down, this is a blatant counterfeit issue, we've done takedowns to your system 3 times, but it keeps popping back up, okay, then they'll wipe it clean. Leslie, do you have anything else to say on that, or you?
No, I think that's the gist of it. They're not there to help you manage your unauthorized seller problem. It would be nice if they would. A lot of times they'll have sellers violating their own policies, and we'll say, hey, Amazon, this seller's violating your policy, and they still won't do anything. So I think it's definitely more effective to do the seller-based enforcement and either get cooperation with the seller or get them blocked or remove their product sources, cut off, something like that, because you just really can't rely on Amazon to be consistent.
You also have to think about the platform model is a unique model in that they make money by making it as easy as possible for sellers to get on there, and they don't make money by kicking them off.
Right.
And so they're going to have all these marketplaces that are opening, eventually, if they want to make a lot of money, they're going to have the threshold low to get on there, and they're going to put it on the brand to control distribution and things like that. They don't have the incentive to be super strict with kicking sellers off. So I think it's going to come down to brands are going to have to control their distribution tightly. They're going to have to do the enforcement against unauthorized sellers. They're going to have to do the pricing policies. And then you have to have efficient ways to work with the marketplaces when you do see things like theft, fraud, and IP infringements. And you got to think about a holistic. The market's so fragmented. You got brand protection companies over here that do IP protection. You got lawyers over here that do policies. And we like to think about holistic channel control to the ultimate KPI of 95% of the sales going out the door at the price you want. And I think that's how you got to think about it. You can't think about some IP lawyer saying, well, I'm just going to go after counterfeits. And it just doesn't work that way. I saw some other questions over here. Anybody else? Yep, go ahead.
I have clients sometimes who complain that they have goods that have been purchased with stolen credit cards, and they find that those goods show back up on Amazon, Walmart for sale. Is there any way to address that with the marketplace and enforce against that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we have a number of clients that have that problem. We have not had success working with Amazon generally. We have to build a really strong case to send it to them. And we do that. We work with them, we work with brands regularly to build the case and present it to Amazon. We also work with brands directly with retailers. So like we have really good relationships with the loss prevention teams and retailers to try to prevent the goods from getting stolen in the first place. So we'll work on it from an Amazon storefront central and talk to the retailer and say, hey, we've got these sellers that we think are selling stolen products. They'll come to us and say, okay, we've got them on our radar. They'll work with actual local law enforcement to get them shut down. So we'll work with them on the Amazon side and the legal enforcement side, trying to get the storefront shut down, while they're working with law enforcement to get their schemes busted up and arrested. So we've had more success working with that relationship and trying to address it from various angles that way than trying to do it with Amazon. Now that we have this relationship with Amazon, I think it'll be easier because we have an easier way to communicate. But it's just important to like keep track of all of that information and really build your case on all the platforms. eBay's actually a lot easier to work with, but Walmart, Amazon, and eBay, all three of those are kind of coming around to that. It's just not a concept they really understand fully the way that resellers do that.
All right, well, time is up, so we will be here. If anybody has any other additional questions, we'll be happy to speak with you. But thank you so much.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.